When you walk into a craft room and see a cheap, flimsy guillotine trimmer on the table, you probably already feel that tiny knot in your stomach. I've tried a few of those budget range cutters that promise 30 sheet capacity for pennies, only to end up with a blade that drags, a base that wobbles, and a safety shield that snaps the first time you try to adjust it. Most of the time I end up buying a second cutter just to finish the job, and that extra expense quickly wipes out any savings. So, before I spend another $1 on a cheap alternative, I wanted to see if the Dahle 580 Premium Guillotine Trimmer actually lives up to the premium price tag or if it's just another overhyped name brand. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The first thing I thought about when I started looking at guillotine trimmers was the kind of paperwork I actually do. I'm a creator who frequently slices large sheets of cardstock, light cardstock for invitations, and occasionally thicker cardboard for prototypes. You need enough cutting length to handle the biggest sheet you'll use. Most hobbyists are happy with 24 inches, but my design projects often run 30 inches wide. The Dahle 580 boasts a 32-inch cutting length, which means you can lay an A3 or even a tabloid sheet flat against the base without hunting for a larger machine. That extra 6 inches might sound like a small detail, but when you're trying to line up a precise cut on a single-sided layout, the additional reach saves you a few frustrating adjustments. One of the biggest pain points with guillotine trimmers is the blade. Low-cost models often have thin, low-grade steel that dulls after a handful of sheets and then starts to tear the paper instead of giving a clean edge. The Dahle's blade is a German-engineered, machine-ground steel piece that claims to stay self-sharpening. In practice, that means after each cut the blade repositions itself just enough to keep the edge honed. I ran through a quick home test cutting about 50 sheets of 120 GSM cardstock back-to-back and the blade remained consistently crisp. The cuts were clean, without the ragged edges you see on cheaper cutters. For anyone who needs a repeatable, exact line, think wedding invitations, scrapbook pages, or small-scale printing, this self-sharpening feature translates directly into less recutting and fewer wasted sheets. The safety shield is another area where cheap models tend to cut corners. Those thin acrylic guards can crack or, worse, fling the blade if they aren't secured properly. Dahle's acrylic safety shield feels solid and locks into place with a click that you can hear. It sits over the cutting area, so you can keep your fingers safely out of the path while you adjust the blade angle or feed the next sheet. In real-world use, I found myself able to make quick, one-handed cuts without constantly checking where my hands were. That might not seem like a huge benefit, but if you've ever tried to finish a batch of 100 invitation cards and got a splinter in your finger, you'll appreciate that extra layer of protection. Now, let's talk about the base. The product claims a sturdy metal base that won't warp or crack, and on a solid workbench the 30-pound base really does stay put. The lower frame is welded, not just bolted together, which eliminates the little wiggle you sometimes get when you're cutting near the edge. That stability is crucial when you're trying to line up a cut that's only a few millimeters from the edge of a large sheet. If the base shifts even slightly, you lose that accuracy and have to start over. The downside here is weight. The unit is definitely not something you'll want to haul around the house or take to a friend's studio. If you need a portable cutter for occasional use, you might consider a lighter model, but for a dedicated crafting space the heft is a sign of durability rather than a flaw. One practical weakness that shows up after a few weeks of use is the angle adjustment mechanism. The blade can be set to angles from 45 to 90, which is great for decorative paper cutting. However, the knob that locks the blade into place is fairly tight, and it takes a bit of force to loosen it each time you want to change the angle. For a seasoned crafter who switches angles multiple times in a single session, that could become a minor annoyance. It's not a deal-breaker, but it's worth noting if you plan to use the trimmer for intricate, multi-angle designs. Who should buy the Dahle 580? If you're a small business owner who regularly produces printed products like greeting cards, planners, or branded stationery, the 30-sheet capacity and long cutting length will keep you productive. Graphic designers who prototype packaging or create hand-cut art pieces will benefit from the precise, clean cuts and the safety shield that lets them work quickly without looking over their shoulder. Even hobbyists who do a lot of paper crafting can justify the price because the machine saves time, reduces waste, and lasts longer than a